G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff Ukraine War update for the 15th of June 2026. I'm your host, the author David Applegate, and I'm continuing to bring you comprehensive news and opinions from both sides of the war. And as the war of words rages, obvious deceptions are becoming more obvious. The cracks are showing, and Europe is starting to learn the meaning of the word fatigue. Today, the Russians overwhelmed Ukrainian air defences, but of course, Ukraine is not even telling us where and when, but they are at least giving us some information. All right, so we know Kiev was hit multiple times, as well as Kharkiv. Dnipro was hit a couple of times, so was Kryvyi. Kherson was only shelled. Kopstvivigel was hit. Nothing to see here, folks. Nope. And Sumy as well. But in Sumy, there's artillery on the buffer zone. Same in the Belgorod-Kharkiv front. All's quiet in Kupiansk. Allegedly, in other areas, there is activity. There's been a breakthrough, but no significant town has fallen. But as I said, the Ukrainians do not want the Russians to start sieging. This, because this industrial area was originally put here, although they put to, because they wanted Sovetsk to be defending manosphere, not the other way around. See, originally this was all designed during the Soviet era for an attack from Europe. So, no significant town has fallen. The Russians have made small gains, but nothing significant. Though they do continue to grind and inflict heavy casualties on the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians just cope and seethe. Clashes from or near, which, often they put markers on names because they don't know where they really took place, on or near, But these maps are put together by volunteers who only go from the information they can scrape from news articles, so I'm not going to take it out on them. But we do see the Russians are making progress. But nothing significant has fallen. But they are advancing in areas. And, as you can see all the way through, there are some towns have still got their markers, but some of these little areas don't have their name markers. But that could just be the map loading. Although a lot of places between towns. But this area here, as you can see, sometimes the Russians do avoid large farm conglomerates, and they do go around stuff sometimes. I'm surprised they haven't gone around this and cut it off. I mean, it would be easier. But, yeah, when we zoom in, this is the same thing. I'm probably going to go across here. Hold them and start going across because we start to see incursion. So I don't think they're going to fight over open fields. Although you never know, they do use some of the open fields for small tank battles. There are small tank battles, I'm not denying it. But most of the time, Ukrainian sends in the tanks and the Russians respond with artillery, and the Ukrainian tanks limp home. Wah, wah. And then the Germans fix them, and they're getting to the point where apparently Germany's starting, parts of Germany are starting to become a tank graveyard where, between Germany and Poland, tank graveyard full of tanks waiting to be repaired. Now, this ain't the early days of the war where inexperienced tank crews ran out of power. I'm talking about tanks with holes in them, tanks with not just broken tracks, but dislodged wheels. But you can see the Russians have moved closer to Orkiv here. They'd already taken this town. They just pushed past it. But point is to don't know why they got a boner for bringing up but I think they want to go through split the middle, just because that was the original plan, to split the middle and cut off these fronts, draw people off these fronts. But we have nothing much elsewhere, no significant towns. But the fact the Russians overwhelmed air defences, obvious answer to Zelensky's overtures. Yeah, William Tell overtures is the response. If, you know. Okay, so this channel is sponsored by you, the real audience. Empire of Elves, that's one word, empireofelves.myshopify.com. To support the channel, I offer you a variety of beautiful mugs, posters, bags. And perhaps I should do t-shirts. Empire of Elves, that's one word, your one-stop shop for beautiful fantasy based on my writing. All right, we have a report from DW in detail about the drug crisis in Ukraine. Now, we're not talking about cocaine, we're talking about meth in particular. And Ukrainian war has been described as dragging on, with a rise in addiction and self-medication is a growing and unspoken problem, one authorities are only just starting to address, and many fear will outlast the war itself. Just like America's drug crisis. There was a heroin crisis in Europe after World War II. Persisted and still persists today in many parts of the world, hidden away in drug clinics. Just sweep it all under the rug. Now, Ukrainian soldiers are increasingly turning to drugs to endure the trauma on the front line. Now, there are many stories from both sides on DW. That's leering, thank you very much. And running out of soldiers, yeah. Yes and no. They're running out of volunteers, but not running out of soldiers. All right, so Germany has finally led credibility to what we've known for years. Ukraine has a drug problem. Russia launched 70 missiles and 611 drones, overwhelming air defenses. So 611 drones, but 632 shot down, but 20 ballistics hit targets. The math don't math, does it? Oh, the math is racist. That's right. Yeah. So, yeah. Large-scale attack, and, yeah. All Ukrainians can do is cry. Now, we don't know the circumstances behind it, but Ukraine calling Russia cultural, uh, Russian scam. This is it's striking when in Christianity support the holy sites. You mean the one they seized by the state and arrested all the monks? We remember Ukraine. Cultural bandits. Weren't you the ones who took down the museum for blew it up? The museum for the liberation of Ukraine. Yeah, from the Nazis. Yeah, pot calling kettle. Pot calling kettle. Now, another way you can support the channel from $1 a month, you can support me on Future Fantasy. That's one word, Future Fantasy, my Patreon, where I'm creating, role-playing, and doing gaming and other stuff. All right, so Russia's gloating, Ukraine is crying, a day ending in Y. Now, a depot near a settlement in the DBR was destroyed by Russian drones in a decisive military operation, which you rarely see Russia carrying out a large-scale decisive military operation. Most of the time, they are small, tentative strikes. Even when they do large-scale strikes, it's usually spread over a large area. Now, they have carried out larger-scale operations before. Again, they take their time to build up, and Russia in what? Well, let's say 3 years has not done as much as America in 90 days. So just think of the amount of sorties, the hundreds of sorties flown by America against Iran compared to the many unsuccessful sorties Ukraine and Russia have inflicted on each other. Unsuccessfully. They have shot down a lot of each other's drones and missiles, without a doubt. Now, Poland is upset. Many people in Poland are upset with Zelensky. But I think Warsaw's demands have been ignored. The Polish president is giving him a few more days to renounce the militias. It ain't going to happen. Zelensky is going to continue to embrace World War era scumbags because Ukraine lacks heroes. Because all the communists were either dead or executed for crimes against humanity. When Ukraine went independent, there was a lot of bloodletting. All your moderates got to stay in power, and none of them did anything spectacular. They're all... Ukraine's done nothing to really... and still doing nothing to really... they should be focusing on their culture, because really cultural heroes are more important than war heroes, Zelensky. But you wouldn't know that because you're a war profiteer and a puppet. Now, Russia launched its strikes in response to not one, but two, well, possibly three terror attacks. One was, of course, the attack on the teacher's school in Donetsk. It's a mosque. There was the attack in Moscow that was foiled by the FSB. 2 Ukrainians, 1 dead. A couple of Russians arrested as well. And the attack on the museum, the Crimean War Museum. And, of course, then there's the destruction of property in general, with falling drones and debris and attacks on Belgrade. So, yeah. Well, there's a foiled attack, and, well, Russian forces in response to these attacks has hit several targets. Now, they actually named that they only went after a few places. They didn't name them all. Now, Ukraine had settled into a midweek attack and thus fell for the. Thus, when Russia broke its pattern and did not attack on Wednesday, Zelensky thought it was all over. Offered, Putin, it's all over. Come talk to me. I'll give you a hug and you can sign my peace agreement. And then Sunday night, Putin went, he's comfortable. Whack him with a big stick. That'll wake him up. And it did. Zelensky pooped his pants and went crying to the world, send me troops, I need retaliation. If you're winning, you don't need retaliation from foreigners, do you, Zelensky? You don't need the British to blow up Russian oil tankers now, do you? No, or sink Turkish grain ships. Yeah. You're not doing as hot as you claim you are, but you've got enough propagandists out there to pump your lies. Right? We all know Russia's not doing as good as they claim. We all know that. But they're not that far off the truth that it's unbelievable. You know, I heard the other day someone said, and if you look at the Ukraine news, sometimes you think we're marching to Moscow. They let that slip, didn't they? Let the Freudian slip go. That a lot of these commentators are pro-Ukrainian. They're paid operatives of Canada and Britain. Why Britain wants to sink its teeth in the Ukraine? Well, it's obvious. They want to be a foreign player and get their revenge on Russia. You know. All right. So Kremlin-Moscow has known for at least the last week, but rapid advances in and pretty much the machine plant where they repair on. I'm telling you right now, this is an old story redone. Right, June 14th. No, they've been retreating since June, early June. No, I would say since May 9th they've been retreating. But now, June 9th, I would say they turned it from voluntary to mandatory. I would say the last of these machine plants, I reckon most of them have already been moved, but their machine plants to do frontline repairs are being moved. I would say these were now, I'd say the majority of these plants had already had machinery moved months ago to neighboring towns. But what I think, and we'll go to Kostnikovia to show you, right? This is the industrial centre. But there's still industry in that up through here. They expected a pure one-sided affair, right? Direct assault only. They never considered flanking. They never considered the Russians being able to cross the rivers. and come up from the other side. They thought they'd genuinely held the lines. Remember, first line broke. Once the first line broke, and it was longer and bigger than the second, it's come down to the second and third. I would say for a long time, the West has known Russia was coming for Donetsk and Lugansk, and they've been preparing the British. I think generally they expected Russia to do something stupid, oversupply or overcommit in the first days of the war, and that they could blow up a lot of Russian ammunition and be caught, and Russia eventually ground down like the Nazis, where the Nazis had huge stockpiles at the start. But as they were blowing up, they couldn't replace them fast enough. And when factories were burnt down, they couldn't replace them fast enough. Where Russia's realizing that grinding down the Ukrainians is giving them hope, and hope keeps them wasting resources on trying to continue. Because Russia needs to basically instill the fear of going to war against Russia. America said, hey, you proved your point, but we could, one arm behind the back, you want to take on 100 stealth fighters or stealth aircraft or 13,000 aircraft out of Europe? And Putin said, no, where's the red line? Where's the red line? So this is the Alaska Agreement. In theory, Russia fights the Ukrainians to a standstill. How far in Zaporizhia they go, I don't know. But the idea, in 1, 2, 3, they fight the Ukrainians to a standstill. They create their little buffer zone. They destroy the fortresses. And they get a peace agreement. But if they lose or they run out of time, they accept the tail between their legs. But then Putin goes to chirp and say, look at all the victories we've had, comrades. We've proven our point. The Europeans have backed off. They're going to rebuild the Nord Stream. Whatever, right? Whatever's on the table, that Zelensky is saying, no, and now he's saying, give me a piece of the pie, give me my 9 billion. So my guess is Europe has to say no. At some point, when Europe cuts off Ukraine from the money tree, then we'll see the peace deals coming out of the woodworks. Because without money, Ukraine is done for. Right? So, obviously, yes, I would love to see Poland stand up for itself and say to Ukraine, fuck you. You won't pay your bills. Kick all the Ukrainians out. Break some arms and legs if they have to. But really, Poland should just take Zelensky out. But they want to, I think, pin Zelensky's death on Russia. Because we all know, and everybody's spoken it, German news has said it out loud, the French news has said it last week, Zelensky can't surrender. They will kill him. The nationalists won't accept it, is actually what they said. Well, we all know what they meant. So you got a third, which is more like, well, close to. So it's only a matter of time. Well, it's more like 28% left, 28.5% less apparently left. About a third there, and it looks like they maybe. And as I said, the best thing for Russia is to have that curved front so that there's no sharp angles or angles of attack, and you want to have a solid border with strict border controls all across Ukraine, all the way. Right, one big, beautiful wall all the way through, and the guard towers, and the truck checkpoints, and the big middle finger to Zelensky, and maybe him living and suffering, knowing that Russia took his prized holiday home and blew up his apartment building, might be enough to have him spending the rest of his life. And when he's a miserable old man suffering, they'll end it simply so that he can't gloat. Simply so he can't turn around and gloat and say, I outlived Putin. No, you're not going to get that luxury. You never know, but I'm just saying. And I'm not always good on predictions, but then again, I always thought, they'd never find out the cardinal and never do anything about it. Well, they found out and they lopped his head off with piano wire. So, well, actually, there are those who think, I know, that if someone betrays Russia, they're a national hero. They're saving Russia. You're not saving anything. It's all selfish. It's all co-perceived. It's all sophistry, right? Ukraine ain't a nation of heroes fighting for survival. Okay, they're fighting to protect their scumbag industries of prostitution and drugs and cigarette smuggling into Europe. That's all they're fighting to protect and preserve. Right? It's a nation that just doesn't understand the benefits of civilization far outweigh just that little bit extra in your pocket for turning a blind eye. But Europe has deep-seated problems that go far beyond the sex clubs and smoking and the petty annoyances of liberalism. Because most of the time, that's all they are, they're just a petty pest. They just want an excuse to be petty. It's the serial offender syndrome, where, someone commits a small series of offences throughout their life for lols. That's Ukraine. Petty offender syndrome, although it's worse. They offend against children, they offend against society in general, and they have, just have no morality. It's all a facade. So thank you all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you're saying, but Russia's not our problem. They're not wanting to be part of the EU, so it's not our problem. If they wanted to be part of the EU, then I said, yeah, they got to clean up their act too. But Ukraine's the one wanting to be part of Europe, so it's the one who has to clean up its act. But Europe won't, and Europe won't force them to. So, because they have petty criminal syndrome. They want America to protect them, but they won't do. That's all they want. One way, it's a toxic relationship. So you can support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. I appreciate each and every one of you because you are in it for the truth, not for the glory. And I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now.